Hey guys, I got it working fine. Okay. Hey guys, welcome to Timeless Mysteries. If anybody's here yet, I was planning to do this while my video was premiering, but my computer decided that just because I had something I needed to do right away, nothing was going to work right. So join us as we unravel the chilling case of Chris Coleman, a man who lived a double life that ended in unimaginable tragedy. What drove him to commit the unthinkable? And what secrets did he try to bury? Find out more on Timeless Mysteries. So, for those of you who are just joining, I'm kind of new to this whole thing. So, you'll just have to bear with the I don't really have a cool, like, setup, you know, it actually looks dirtier than it is. Here, there, that's better. Hey, guys, welcome to Timeless Mysteries. I was planning to get started whenever, my video premiered just a moment ago. I just released a new Chris Coleman video. I've been talking about it for a couple of weeks. Um And I had a couple questions for you guys. There was a few things that came up after I had written everything and made the video, and I realized, oh, wait a second, maybe I got some wrong information here. And if that's true, I need to know because I want to, you know, I don't want to spread misinformation. Let's see if I can play the video because I know some of you will most likely watch this next time. So let's see. So that's the studio. Let's see. Here we go. Here we go. Eh, Videos, and this is my new video. Now I should be able to share it. There. Day morning in May 2009, this peaceful suburb just outside of St. Louis woke to the kind of horror that feels ripped from a nightmare. Chris Coleman, a 32-year-old father of two, a security officer at Joyce Mayer Ministries. So I did just premiere this, and some of you may have already watched it. I hope you really like it. I spent a lot of time writing this one and thinking about it, and I still think that I got some of the information wrong. Um, I found some pieces at the end where it kind of suggested that there wasn't a jury trial, but I'm positive there was a jury. There's just a few things I'm a little kind of unsure of, but I was hoping there'd be a couple of you here so we can all talk about it together. But I can't even tell which page is the actual screen that has like my chat. There it is. So I guess I'll just go through this a little bit once I figure out what screen is what. So that might make it easier. Now I can see both. So I see there's at least one person here, and I just want to welcome you to Timeless Mysteries. I did just premiere this video. It's about Chris Coleman. I spent a lot of time working on it, and I just kind of wanted to, see what you guys thought after you watched it. Um, if you're not familiar with who Chris Coleman is, you really should look him up. So let's see. Yeah, let's just go ahead and play some of this. Columbia, Illinois. A calm Tuesday morning in May 2009, this peaceful suburb just outside of St. Louis woke to the kind of horror that feels ripped from a nightmare. Chris Coleman, a 32-year-old father of two, a security officer for the Joyce Mayer Ministries, dialed 911 to report concerns about his family's safety. He'd gone to the gym early that morning and hadn't heard from his wife, Sherry. It all sounded vaguely routine to the dispatcher: a worried husband, a possible medical emergency. At first glance, it looked like the work of a vengeful outsider. They soon realized they had stepped into a montage of a menacing massacre that would send shockwaves not just through Colombia, but across the nation. What goes through the mind of a detective entering a scene that defies all logic and humanity, yet something about the words on the wall felt off, almost as if the killer had chosen the wrong phrases. Now, if you're like me, you're wondering, why would someone call the police from the gym that's only a few minutes away? But before I get into that, let me answer another question you might be asking. Who is Chris Coleman? Welcome to Timeless Mysteries. Please like and subscribe. Today, we look at a truly despicable, premeditated crime that will pull on your heartstrings. 3 victims, 1 grieving father, and a lot of evidence that just doesn't add up.
We're investigating a triple homicide here in the city of Columbia. Deceased at the home at 2854 Robert Drive is a female by the name of Sherry Coleman. She's 31 years old, and her 2 children, Garrett Coleman, who's 11 years old, and Gavin Coleman, who is 9 years old.
Chris Coleman was born into a devout Christian family. His father was a pastor who emphasized faith morality. Yeah, so this guy is, you know, if you followed the Chris Watts case, this guy is a lot like him. He comes from a middle class family. He's got a beautiful family. He's got a decent career. He is got the storybook life that most of us want. And the big question is, how does this happen? When you think about this kind of story and somebody's murdering their kids, I mean, it's tragic. Nobody enjoys hearing about stories like this. What really set this story apart for me was the fact that he had taken the time to decorate his house, make it look like somebody attacked his family. He set up a plan to have an alibi. He thought he had the perfect plan. And it's when you compare this guy to someone like Chris Watts, it feels like he had a better plan than Chris Watts did. Um, but Chris Watts also had a plan. He planned on telling everybody, "Oh, my family's missing. Please come home." But this guy had a backstory that started 6 months ahead of time. He started sending emails to himself, threatening his family. And community involvement. After high school, Chris enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps, where he served honorably. Upon leaving the Marines, he used his military training to secure a position in the security office at the Joyce Mayer Ministries, a prominent evangelical organization where he was tasked with protecting Joyce Mayer and her staff. From the outside, he seemed like a typical middle-class family man. He often appeared at church events with his family, seemed attentive to his children, and presented the outward image of a devoted husband. Neighbors recall him as friendly and respectable.
In fact, they told officers they had seen him playing catch in his front yard with his boys just the day before. As police scoured,
I think that right there, the part where he was playing catch with his children the day before, is one of the scarier parts of this story. Everything was normal one moment and the next it wasn't. But he had this plan going on in the back of his mind for months, and he knew that this was going to happen.
just the day before. As police scoured the scene for clues, several details stood out. There was no sign of forced entry, just open doors and windows, as if begging someone to walk in. The house was eerily undisturbed.
This is a man who is a security officer, and he's getting threats to, someone is threatening his family's life, and there's open doors and windows. This, I think, was the first red flag that the police had.
Aside from the strange.
And, I didn't put a lot of the graffiti in there, but it just kind of didn't make sense to me, like the way it was written. I don't know what he was thinking when he put that there.
Strange words left on the wall. Other than that, nothing seemed out of place. The boys, so young, had no chance. There was no defensive wounds and no signs of any struggle at all. They probably never even woke up. But Sherry Coleman's death told a different story. She fought back with every ounce of strength she had, her body bearing the marks of a vicious struggle. It was desperate, brutal, but in the end, she lost.
See, this woman was actually in the military also, and she's strong, and she possibly almost won. Tragically, she did not, and she was killed. Uh, uh, um, her husband murdered her, but it's just so tragic.
The messages on the walls were terrifying, and the officers began to wonder, could this blood-red graffiti be a message from a serial killer? When Chris finally arrived, police expected to see a distraught father panic.
That blood red graffiti, it feels like the guy watched Helter Skelter or something and thought it was a good idea to kind of replicate that and, as a way to hide himself, take him off of the suspect list. But the way it's written doesn't make any sense. Um, and I don't think the police thought it made sense either. And so he was immediately, questioned. They had already decided that he was a suspect, even if they hadn't told him yet.
Red graffiti be a message from a serial killer? When Chris finally arrived, police expected to see a distraught father panic and desperate for information. Instead, they encountered behavior that raised several red flags. Though he claimed he had feared for his family's life, Chris did not rush inside to check on them. While Chris appeared tearful, he did not show the frantic disbelief or anger one might expect from a protective parent. To many on the scene, his emotional response appeared oddly controlled. Observers noted fresh scratches on Chris's arms. When questioned,
this part is interesting because he actually asked for a blanket and then he covers up his arms. And I guess that would kind of look like, he is warming himself up a little bit, but it really doesn't, especially because the police officer sitting here has already noticed the scratches on his arms. And the fact that he covers those up, he doesn't try to cover up his legs or his shoulders, just his arms, was another red flag.
Later at the station, he was wearing shorts and a t-shirt and told the officer he was cold. The officer brought him a blanket, yet he mainly used it to conceal these marks on his arms. Chris's timeline didn't add up. He stated he'd left for the gym early that morning, which conflicted with his phone records and CCTV footage. As detectives began to examine the grisly scene, looking at the bedrooms, the graffiti, and Coleman's controlled responses, they quickly had the foundation for a highly suspicious murder investigation. But let's take a step back for a moment. Chris made a frantic 911 call from the gym. Why would he do that? To answer that, we have to examine.
When I first found out about this case, a couple of my subscribers had mentioned it to me. One of my coworkers mentioned it to me, and I started looking into what actually happened. And the thing that stood out the most was, why would somebody call 911 when they're at the gym? You don't go to the gym for like 5 or 6 hours. You don't go to the gym all day long, and you don't drive 2.5 hours to go find a gym either. So I haven't looked up exactly where his gym was, but my guess is that it was probably 10 to 20 minutes away from his house. He could have easily rushed home and fought off anybody attacking his family, but that wasn't what was going to happen, because that's not what happened. He had murdered his family. He thought he had a perfect alibi. And, you know, but I'm sure that the police would have also thought that this was weird, that he called 911 before he got back to the house.
And the story Chris began weaving 6 months prior to that phone call. Chris Coleman had been reporting threatening emails. According to him, an unknown zealot hated the Joyce Meyer Ministries, which was his employer, and
If you get a chance, I highly recommend you read through some of this stuff. It's ridiculous. These are emails that he wrote to himself. And I mean, it's insane that somebody would do this. And he actually believed that this was a way to eliminate his family without getting caught. And, this happened in 2009. So I get it. Maybe people didn't realize that they can track your IP address back then. But I'm pretty sure I remember finding out about the IP address thing like back in 2001. They had stuff to hide your IP address. And I always wondered, well, why would you want to do that? Well, this is why you would want to hide your IP address. You're sending fake emails to yourself. But I mean, you could read through some of this, and it's just insane. Like, I'm sure you mother effers are going to try putting your bleepity bleep ass security team. This is just like ridiculous. And he's a security guard, and he's actually been answering emails like this. So maybe the emails that the ministry evangelistic, what was it? I forget her name, but the Joyce Meyer Ministries, maybe he saw emails like this all the time. So maybe it made sense to him that it would actually sound reasonable, but it's not reasonable. It's not anything that's going to prevent somebody from suspecting, you know, an outside source after your family dies.
Stated that they would kill Coleman's family unless he quit his security job. Going to the gym served as his alibi, and those emails explained why he was worried enough to make a call to 911. As the story became clearer, investigators quickly noted the contradictions. Chris was a seasoned Marine and security officer who claimed to be worried about his family's safety. Yet the home was unsecured and lacked a working surveillance system. Chris crafted a role he intended to play out for the investigators, but actors need to practice their lines, and Chris's statements and phrases and mannerisms didn't seem natural in any way. Police took note of something more important than all the mounting evidence combined. Why didn't Chris ask how his family died? Instead of charging through the police tape, he collapsed.
That right there is another major red flag. It's probably something that he forgot to ask. He probably had planned to ask, well, what happened? Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And then he'd fall over and start crying. But he got there, he's trying to perform for these detectives that are at his house. They have found the bodies. They know what's happened. They see the spray paint on the walls. They're, it's a gruesome scene. There's children dead, and then this man who is a security guard comes home, but he didn't get there in a hurry after he called 911. He took his time. The investigators had plenty of time to walk through the house. They had already looked at many of they had evidence collected already, and this guy comes home, Chris Coleman. He comes home and, they say, hey, your family is dead. And he immediately falls to the floor and starts crying. And, maybe that's something that someone would do. I don't know if I would fall down and start crying. I would probably be hysterical. I don't know what would happen. I mean, those are the kinds of things that happen when they happen randomly. There's no way to like act. You can't just be an actor. Hollywood actors kind of, are good at playing that role in TV movies, but a lot of times they also look kind of cheesy, but he thought that falling down and crying would, elicit empathy from the police, take him off the suspect list, but it didn't. It made him everything even more suspicious because they didn't realize it at the time. But after the officers began to talk to each other, they realized that no one had been asked how the family died. He didn't try to break through the like law enforcement guys telling him, no, you can't go up there. It's a crime scene or whatever. He just immediately fell over and started crying. Um, and I don't think I've ever seen a movie where somebody does something like that. Um, I've seen people like get angry and like they don't believe it's true. I mean, there's 100 different things that a person can feel in that moment. And I suppose, grief could be so profound that you collapse, but it didn't work. He got caught pretty quick. It did take a couple of weeks because he didn't confess. So he stuck to his guns about, no, it wasn't me. It was these people who were sending us these emails.
Collapsed on the floor, curled up into the fetal position, and started crying. Chris probably believed they were buying his story. Additionally, Sherry's friends and relatives revealed that Coleman was having an affair with Tara Lentz, a one-time family friend. However, Chris denied this, but it was quickly confirmed. There was phone records, nude photos, IP addresses, and the affair all led detectives to the same conclusion. Chris was the killer. In the hours immediately following the death of the Coleman family, detectives brought Chris Coleman downtown for questioning. Although investigators had only preliminary observations like Chris's oddly controlled demeanor, the scratches on his arms, and a timeline that didn't quite add up, they knew there was more to uncover. Chris began to speak about these threatening emails again. He claimed to have received them.
These emails, like, you guys really need to go through and look at all of them. You can find most of them online. Um, it just blows my mind every time I think about this guy planning this for months.
Up to a couple days prior to this attack. At first, these messages seemed valid, albeit a long shot, but detectives continued interviewing him and found additional inconsistencies. They decided to take a much closer look at those emails. Over the next several days, forensic specialists combed through the IP logs.
So when you look at family annihilators, there is several stressors that have to happen before they commit an act like this. And I actually have a new script that I'm recording now, and it's going to be a video pretty soon. And I think it's very interesting, especially if you want to know how to spot a family annihilator beforehand. The problem is that these type of killers are so rare. There are like millions of people who have these same stressors and don't kill. But They're still red flags because they do other things. They may not kill somebody, but it might be a domestic violent, issue where the police get involved and somebody goes to jail. It could be other like serious crimes also. Um, but I won't talk too much about that yet, but I just want to let you guys know that it's out there. I've written it. I've done a lot of research, and I wish that there was a foolproof like how to spot this kind of killer. But um, all I can do is show you the main stressors, the red flags, and maybe somebody uh, yourself, even maybe it'll save somebody some you know problems later down the road.
Email headers, and Coleman's electronic devices. That deeper analysis revealed a critical breakthrough. The so called anonymous threats could be traced directly back to Chris himself. This discovery didn't happen all at once. It took multiple interviews and methodical digital analysis. But once investigators linked the emails to Coleman's own IP address and phone records, it became clear that the supposed zealot was nothing more than a fabricated persona he had created to throw suspicion off of himself. As soon as investigators determined that Chris Coleman had staged the email threats, the truth became undeniable. The elaborate ruse, a calculated attempt to fabricate a narrative of external hostility, was nothing more than a desperate bid to divert suspicion. Instead, it backfired spectacularly. It was the final nail in the coffin for Chris Coleman, as all of his credibility evaporated. On May 19th, just 2 weeks after the murders, Coleman was arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. If you're asking yourself, did he really do it? Experts widely assert that framing someone this meticulously across digital, forensic, and behavioral evidence would be nearly impossible. Could Coleman have been framed? Law enforcement training does teach investigators to be alert to planted clues, but rarely do they encounter attempts so intricate that they include multiple independently verifiable pieces of evidence that are all pointing to the same suspect.
So I think it's a pretty common thing to immediately think, well, what if those emails weren't from him? What if they just made it look like they were from him? But the problem was it wasn't just the emails, it was other things. He said he was here and then his phone record showed something else. And, he said he wasn't having an affair, but he was. There's a lot of different things. And I think the biggest red flag, even besides those emails, was his body language. He was acting strange, like they expecting they expected a different type of grief.
Of course, no system is perfect, but in Coleman's case, each layer of physical and digital proof consistently pointed back to him. Taken together, these factors made it highly improbable that he was the victim of a deliberate setup.
Prosecutor Chris Wrights did not say much. Coleman felt them die, Your Honor. He's capable of strangling innocent children.
In 2011, a jury nearly found Coleman innocent with a 7-5 vote. However, after one juror discovered a discrepancy in the timeline of the affair, everything changed. They found a photo of Chris kissing his mistress 1 month earlier than what he had claimed in testimony. It became obvious that if
So what happened was there was a juror that was looking through the evidence. From what I gathered, and I think I might have been wrong about some of this too. So if anybody knows for sure or can show me some information so I can like figure out if I'm right or if I get, presented some of this incorrectly. But, there was a juror and she's looking through the photographs that went through the evidence. And on the back of one of the photos, it said like October instead of November, when I guess somebody testified that the affair started in November. And it didn't. And it was obvious because of the date on the picture. Um, and the picture just showed him with his girlfriend, and it really changed the jury's verdict, really. But what I found out afterwards, when I was putting the video together, was something about how this the jury got dismissed, maybe, or um, Chris Coleman chose to have the judge decide his sentence rather than the jury, or something strange that I'm a little confused about.
If he could lie about that, he could lie about anything. After a long deliberation, Chris was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life in prison without parole. People inside and outside of the courtroom cheered in approval.
Columbia Police Chief Joseph Edwards believed if there's a case for execution, Chris Coleman was it, but he agreed it would not bring closure.
For anybody involved or associated with this case, closure does not happen when a 9-year-old, an 11-year-old, and their mother are murdered while they're in their bed in their home in the city of Columbia or anywhere else in any city in any country.
Judge Milton Wharton said a decision to execute would be symbolic without leading to any closure. He gave Coleman life in prison without parole, calling the loss of freedom the most potent retribution.
What truly goes on in the minds of these? Chris Coleman's case is nothing short of heinous, leaving many of us grappling with the haunting question: how could you do this? How do you kill somebody you love? But here's another question: are we becoming numb to these unimaginable tragedies? While each story is unique, there's one unsettling thread that ties family annihilators together. What drives them to commit such horrifying acts? And what dark secrets do they all try to hide? Many of you know I've spent quite a bit of time exploring the Chris Watts case. Along the way, I've uncovered some chilling insights about family annihilators that you really have to hear. In my next video, find out what 3 factors drive a person to kill. For those of you who love my trivia, here's something to think about. How many serial killers do you think you've unknowingly walked past in your lifetime? Drop your best guess in the comments. As always, be kind, stay vigilant, and never stop questioning the truth. I'll see you in the next video.
So I was trying to do some research on this question because one time I worked with a coworker who swears she was almost killed by a serial killer, but obviously there's no way to know for sure. But I believe she felt that she did. And if you look at most of these killers, because I've been working on a couple of stories about Jeffrey Dahmer, the big name serial killers, and I think it's just weird how normal they look. So I think that there's probably a number of us that have walked by a serial killer in our lifetimes, maybe even more than once. These people are just people you wouldn't recognize on the street. You wouldn't see and run for fear. You wouldn't even feel nervous when you see these people. Um, and I've got an upcoming video, hopefully it comes out next weekend, that talks about Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer and why they're so scary. I'm also working on one about the BTK killer and the Golden State Killer as well. And I'm also working on some other fun stories. I'm working on one to basically, I'm considering the Nicole and Chris Watts relationship and how that relationship evolved into murder. Is it possible that this type of relationship is what triggered that murder? And, it ends up being more about relationships than about the murder itself. But I think it's something worth looking at. It's not as interesting to a lot of true crime people simply because it's about relationships. And, a lot of my sources are from relationship guidebooks and stuff. that kind of explain why people are, end up in an affair, why people, like having affairs. The secret relationship is its own little, I don't know. It's like it makes them euphoric, I guess. It makes them feel exciting instead of boring. These are people who live and have a family that's like normal, that it's boring. Um, they don't feel any excitement in their life anymore. And so a secret relationship, an affair, is one way to, change that bored feeling into something else. It doesn't, it's very rare that it turns into any type of murder, but um, usually, well, I'm just gonna save it for the. I don't want to get into all the specifics, but I was really hoping to see some of you guys here. I know I don't do lives, and I know that I'm not that great at them yet, but I just wanted to go through this one anyway. So if you watch this after the fact, um, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to make it fun for you guys. It would be more fun if you guys were here so you can, add to the conversation. But I promise I will get better at these. So, anyways, I'm going to go ahead and end the live today. But I hope you guys take the time and watch this Chris Coleman video from start to finish. Make some comments in there, like it, share it with your friends. Um, you know, I'm a small channel, so I don't earn money from YouTube very often. I've earned like you have to have a high amount of um, traffic on your channel and watch hours to earn anything significant. But I've earned a couple times, um, but I end up paying more for the tools that I use and stuff and the equipment and stuff than I do. Um, get back from Google AdSense and YouTube. Um, but I'm trying to grow my channel and I am trying new things. I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone. I started out doing AI voices. If you remember my old videos, they were all recorded with an AI voice. And now I'm using my own voice and I think my voice sounds pretty good. But I don't know. I'm just trying to get better and I really appreciate you guys. Um, and yeah, so just keep on checking out my channel. I'm going to try to make some new trivia this weekend. Um, if you guys have any ideas for trivia, please send it my way so that I could, you know, I'm I don't want to start repeating the same questions I've had. It's just getting harder and harder to find, unique questions to ask you guys in the trivia section on my community tab. But I really enjoy doing it. It helps me to find content to write about. It gives me a little bit of perspective. Plus, I just get curious and I just want to know stuff. And so I start down a rabbit hole and that's where a lot of this YouTube stuff started was just me being curious and wanting to find out more. Um, but anyways, please watch this video from start to finish. I don't care if you just like, turn it on and listen to it while you're doing other things, as long as it plays all the way through, so that I can, YouTube will know that it's a decent video and it'll share it with other people. Because as we start growing, the channel will get bigger, and when there's more conversations in the comments, then there's just going to be more fun because we're going to have more unique discussions, and that will trigger more unique content. Um, I like to think that my perspective on things is pretty interesting. I know I like to focus on the psychology, the whys, and stuff, but I am trying to I'm just trying to be better, guys. I promise. I will get better. These live streams will get better, and we will have more fun together. But as always, stay kind, be vigilant, and I'll see you in the next video.